Working with partners is one of the most disastrous things that you do to your company. What if one of the partners goes off and gets a drug addiction? Are you now partnered with his ex-wife? Makes no sense. I just say that as a word of caution, no stupid questions. The topic for today's video is partnerships.
Well, howdy there, partner.
Howdy, partners.
Howdy, partners.
More specifically, we're going to be talking about partnerships within your real estate investing company. Working with partners is one of the best ways to grow your real estate investing business, but if you set it up the wrong way, it can be one of the most disastrous things that you do to your company. In this video, I'm going to go through 3 different options for how you can set up a partnership in your real estate investing business to ensure that you're setting up the right partnership for the right situation. I'm Kirby Atwell from Living Off Rentals, where we believe high quality rental properties are the best investment a person can make. Since 2011, I've been involved in lots of different real estate investing partnerships on lots of deals, and some of those went according to plan. They were great. They had the expected outcome, and others were painful, and I wish I could go back and either not form that partnership or form it a different way, one of these other ways that I'm about to go over right now. So if you're excited to dive into the 3 different partnership structures that I recommend, depending on your situation and a number of factors we're going to go over, hit the like button, also hit the subscribe button so you can be notified when future videos similar to this one are released. Real quick precursor before I dive into these 3 different types, just want to mention I'm not an attorney, so this is not legal advice. This is advice coming from a real estate investor who's been doing this for quite a while, and this is how I would structure it. But I always recommend talk to your attorney before you actually form one of these partnerships so that you can understand some of the potential pros and cons to each of these different types. Partnership structure number 1. This is the most obvious one. This is the one I started with because I didn't understand that the other 2 options existed and they might have been a better option for me. But this is the division of equity. So what does that mean? It means that you're just going to form a new entity, an LLC most likely, and you're going to divide up the ownership amongst a couple of people. This sounds pretty simple. It sounds pretty intuitive, but I would recommend this as a last option. I bring it up first because it's the most intuitive. It's the one most people are drawn to. They think it's the only option, but I actually think it's your worst option when you're forming a real estate investing partnership. So why I don't feel that this is the place to start for a real estate investing partnership? Well, number 1, basically you are entering into a marriage with whoever your future partner is going to be in this LLC.
And Marissa.
Don't do it.
I know that sounds a little weird, but in the eyes of the law, that's how it's viewed. You both now own this new business, this thing that represents both partners. And so the reason that a lot of times people get into a partnership is because they lack a skill. They find a partner who complements them. They're maybe good at sales or finding deals, and they need somebody who's good at marketing or finance. And so they think, well, this is great. We'll partner together and we'll form this business where you just do that and I'll do this. But what they quickly find is that now they're having these discussions as if they're in a married relationship, because they have to be on the same page with everything. Because if that guy who's responsible for marketing wants to go off and do some crazy marketing campaign that doesn't represent your values as the partner, then you're going to be very uncomfortable with that. So you need to be on the same page with finances, with who you're hiring, with the marketing plan. Every decision you now need to have these discussions over, as opposed to the real reason why you got into entrepreneurship or real estate investing in the first place a lot of times is so that you can do your own thing, so that you can be your own boss. But you find that now you're accountable to all these different partners when in reality, all you really wanted is somebody with a specific skill set, and you possibly could have gone out and hired that skill set and avoided all of these other conversations that you now have to have. For this reason, I've seen so many of this type of partnership fall apart, the type where, several friends get together and they divide up the equity in one LLC. And unfortunately, these are the ones that end up in a courtroom years down the road, where they started with such great intentions. They thought they were all on the same page. And then a few years later, all of a sudden they realize that they are far from being on the same page, and this business no longer represents them, and they've got a lot of untangling to do, sort of like a divorce. So I would only recommend forming this type of partnership if you've done two things. Number one, the person that you're partnering with, you need to be in lockstep with them. You need to know them on a deep level. It's not somebody you just met at a RIA. It's somebody that you've got a relationship with. You understand that this is somebody that you are going to partner with for the long term, and that you're both heading in the exact same direction with the business. Number two, you've spelled out your agreement in excruciating detail in the operating agreement. So every LLC has an operating agreement attached to it. So don't just take a template operating agreement and say, well, I know we're on the same page. Work through the details of exactly who's doing what, the time requirements, how much money each person's gonna put in, what happens in all of the scenarios that could happen. What if one of the partners goes off and gets a drug addiction? What happens then? What if one of them gets a divorce? Are you now partnered with his ex-wife? If this isn't spelled out in advance, all of these scenarios happen. So I typically recommend forming one of the other two recommended types of partnerships. The third one that I'm going to go over is my favorite, but in certain situations, this type might still make sense. The second type of partnership is sort of a modified version of the first type, but it's just set up a little bit differently. I set up this type of partnership a few years ago with a few family and friends, and so far this has been working out fantastically. So this type of partnership works out well in the common scenario in real estate investing, where lots of people want to put their money together to buy properties, but only one of them is the one who's going to be doing all the work in getting the deals done. So what we did is we formed this LLC, and all the owners own their percentage of the equity based on how much money they contributed. So if the total amount contributed was $200,000 and I contributed $50,000 of that capital, then my ownership percentage was 25% of the overall LLC. But we were very specific in the operating agreement as to the intent of this LLC, and that is to buy, rehab, and rent properties. And for all the owners who weren't going to be doing the work, but they still wanted to own real estate in their portfolio so that they could get the tax benefits of owning real estate, this was a great option for them. But obviously, they're not doing as much work as me, the operator, who's going out and finding the deals, rehabbing the deals, and managing the deals. And so we had to set up a very specific comp plan for the operator, for me, for my business. So my business owns a percentage because I had put in X dollars into the LLC right up front. And so my business was responsible for those three things. And so we set up a comp system, and we came up with, here's the ideal type of deal that we're going to target. We were very specific about the type of deal, where it's going to be, all the ins and outs of how much money it's supposed to make, how much the rehab should cost approximately. And so we could be on the same page of what we're targeting, and then all the partners could agree when we found that when I found that type of deal, the other partners who were funding it, they could agree on that we're going to move forward with this particular property. I would get compensated for finding the deal. I would get compensated again for rehabbing the deal successfully. And then at the end, I would get compensated for managing the property under my business as well. And so I'm making money from the partnership because I contributed capital, so I own a percentage, but then I'm also making money as the operator. And the other investors who are silent investors who just put in capital, they're extremely happy because they get all the tax write-offs of the real estate, and they're getting exceptional returns on their money in these properties that we're burring within the LLC. So this particular type of partnership works really well if you've got family and friends that are kind of all on the same page as to the types of deals that you want to do together. But the third type of partnership is actually my favorite, and this is the one I use the most, and that's because it limits your downside risk, but it allows you to partner with lots of different real estate investors and really specialize in what you are good at and capitalize on all the people around you who might complement you without putting yourself at a ton of risk or getting into a marriage-like partnership. The last type of partnership is called a joint venture. And what a joint venture is where I'll have my real estate investing business over here. You know, my business is GreenVet Homes. That's the name of my real estate investing business. And then I'll have friends who have their own real estate investing businesses over here. And they all are really good at different things. They all have different personality types. Some are really good at finding deals. Some are good at marketing. Some are good at lining up money. Some are good at finding contractors and managing the rehab. And so I'm able to specialize on what I'm really good at, and I can come together with them and we can form a joint venture around a specific deal. So I could be talking to my buddy and say, hey, you know, you're really good at lining up money and I'm really good at finding deals over here. So let's just agree that the next deal that I find we'll joint venture on. And that joint venture is controlled by one document, an agreement, a joint venture agreement, that's typically a pretty simplified agreement that just says, hey, my LLC, your LLC are coming together. Maybe we're both on title, maybe just one of them's on title, whatever is said in the agreement. And I'm gonna contribute X amount of dollars, you'll contribute X amount of dollars. I'm responsible for finding the deal. You're responsible for lining up the contractors or the money for the deal. The intent of this agreement is that we're gonna buy this property, we're gonna rehab it, and we're gonna sell it. Once it's sold, we're gonna pay off the investor first, and then whatever's left over, we're gonna divide it 60-40, me and you, or 40-60, whatever, however you wanna divide it. So you're coming together for that specific deal, but if that deal goes bad, then you never have to talk to that person ever again. You know, you're not married to them as opposed to starting an LLC with someone where you both own it. You have to be on the same page about everything. You just have to be on the same page about one particular deal that you've both, agreed on the terms of up front. You go through that deal, you divide up the equity. You can have your own marketing over here, your own brand identity. They can have their own brand identity. You can go back and live your life. So that's why I recommend joint ventures are such a great way to form partnerships with lots of different people who have all different types of skills. So if you want an example joint venture agreement that I've used in the past, just so you can see what's in it, I'll post a link to it in the description below. And remember, I'm not an attorney. This is not a legal document. This is just an example of the type of terms that I've gone over with somebody in the past when we formed a successful joint venture. I always recommend having a document like this examined by an attorney before you get into this joint venture, and make sure that there's no stone left unturned, that you've covered all the main factors of the agreement. The final aspect that I want to just bring up real quick that's kind of tangentially related to partnerships is just the idea that every LLC that you form is going to have its own set of costs. It's going to have its own set of time that it's going to take to manage the LLC. You're probably going to have to set up its own bank account, file another tax return that's going to cost you money, keep another set of books. So there's a lot of people, especially when you're first getting started, you'll go to seminars and there's attorneys who will sell you on the idea of setting up 20 different LLCs in succession, and one owns the other one, and there's all these different backdoor channels to protect your assets. In a lot of cases, you have no assets to protect anyway. So you spend thousands and thousands of dollars setting up this intricate structure, opening all these bank accounts, filing all these tax returns, and at the end of the day, you've spent all your time on this entity structure that makes no sense, and it's prohibited you from spending time on the important stuff like doing deals. So I just say that as a word of caution as you're starting to think through the type of entity you want to set up and how you want to structure it in the future. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments below what your questions are around partnerships. There's no stupid question, especially when you're first getting started, and I'll answer the best I can any questions that are posted in the comments below. Also, share this video maybe with a friend who could use it, or with somebody that you're thinking about partnering with, so that you can make sure you're on the same page as to the right partnership structure that makes sense for the two of you. Also, if you're craving more Living Off Rentals, we've got two options for you. You can download the Living Off Rentals podcast on any podcast player. And in that podcast, I interview people who are way smarter than I am on lots of different rental investing related topics. And also, you can join the Living Off Rentals Facebook group. It's a really engaged Facebook group. It grows every single day. There's new members coming in, and we have some really inspiring conversations there. So I'd love to see you in the Facebook group. I hope to see you there, but if not, I'll see you in the next video.